I'm Lisa Bauer. I am a local artist within the Treasure Valley, and I've been painting, at least in the oil medium, for about 20 years. As most artists, they start young in life, and I started early on doing all sorts of different types of art, but in the last 20 years I've kind of evolved into doing oil paintings and have just thoroughly enjoyed that. The nice thing about oil paintings is, for me, they have a lot of forgiveness, so I don't have to worry so much if I make a mistake. I have that ability to come back and paint over whatever I didn't like the first time, and I do that quite often with my paintings. I'll look at them, study them for a few days, try to interpret what I've done wrong or what I've done right, and enhance them however they need it. So that's kind of nice. There's so much out there that you kind of want to try it all, but I've sort of migrated towards doing Southwest style art. The Southwest has so much rich color in it that I really love the vibrancy in the colors of the Southwest. My paintings are beginning to evolve, and I am doing more landscape. As I started out, I was doing more of, as I said, Southwest style, Southwest landscapes, architecture, and a lot of still life. I am trying to do more of the landscape of Idaho now. There's so much beauty out there that seems so simple in our existing rural areas, and as I'm driving down the back roads, I'll stop, I'll take a picture, and then come back at some given point in time and make that up into a painting. So many of our fields and old houses and barns are being torn down and made way for new housing developments, and so before that's all gone, I really hope to be able to capture some of that. To begin with my paintings, as I mentioned, going around taking photographs of the rural area, I'll take that photograph and then I'll take it into Photoshop and manipulate the painting to get the colors and the tones and the values that I want to try to represent that. So from this, I have the original photograph that I took, and then this is what I've manipulated. The second one, large one, is what I have manipulated and colorized into the tones and the values that I want to portray in my painting. I'm Lisa Bauer, and you can see a lot more of my art down here at Art Source Gallery, downtown Boise on Main Street.
Hi, I'm Jerry Hendershot, and I'm a ceramic artist here down at Art Source Gallery. I also show work over at Gallery 518, and I'm a teacher here at Timberline High School in East Boise. And so essentially what you see here in front of you is one of my, I call my 3 lines of work. I do a lot of raku wear. And what I like about raku is in some of these pieces you can see how the colors vary and they change. No matter how you turn it, the story kind of changes. believe it or not, this is one glaze. And what's great about raku is they're copper-based glazes usually, and they interact with oxygen and the lack of oxygen. And so, for example, anytime you see magentas or reds or coppers, you know that there's been a lack of oxygen to the vessel. Here we see a really bold area of poor oxygen supply. But whenever you see blues and greens, that was where it oxidized. So it's a little bit of science, a little bit of visual arts. This one here a lot more consistent in color, so the story is a little more generalized. Here you'll have what's called a burp line. You can see kind of this little line right here and right along here. This is a line where the flames actually came up. And what raku is essentially is glazing low fire ware with a copper-based glaze, and then you pull it out with paratongs at about 1800 degrees, and you put it into a combustible material like leaves or sawdust, and it catches on fire, and then you play with the amount of oxygen you want to allow that glaze to have as it cools down, and then you get certain effects. Here again, a moment of oxidation, a large area of reduction or oxygen deprivation, I guess you call it. So it's kind of fun to manipulate those sort of things. So this line of work, I do a lot of form-based work, big, broad, open surface. And this is only a small sampling of what I've got here, but I like this big bare area because that allows for the various effects to kick in. Other things, I do some functional wear as well. These are what's called Cone 5 mid-fire glazes. They're food safe, microwave safe, and they're designed to be a function first with an aesthetic value added a little bit later. And so right now, as you can see, this is probably my best-selling color, the turquoise, and the other colors usually I've got a wide variety. But so right here, two different things. Another one of my lines that I really like are more earthy, more organic, a little more asymmetrical. I grew up in Nevada, and so I really like the Great Basin, the surfaces of weathered rock and old rusted signs and erosion and those sort of things, lichens. And so that's kind of what I've been striving to do with some of that work, is how to emulate the place of the Great Basin in my work, so that when you look at the work, it looks like it came from that place, if that makes sense. To kind of blur the line between made and found. And so those are various examples. I call them geodes. Then there's neo-geodes, and then there are some sculptural kind of vases and vessels that are part thrown and part slabbed. These works here are all thrown on the wheel, but some of the work I do is hand-built. And then the third line, which is really very different than the other two, is more of an urban motif. It's, I call them tin or Tin Men teapots. They're kind of a steampunk theme, influenced by artists like Gerard Ferrari of Indiana, a guy named Sean Tan, who's a children's book illustrator who does a lot of really kind of playful, slightly humorous but slightly menacing characters. And so these are kind of fun because I like to try and make them look like they are a blend of animate and alive, and yet industrial and mechanical, and I use different glazes that emulate metallic glazes. I'll paint them with an iron paint and then put what's called a rust activator, so it rusts the surface, gives them kind of that aged feel. My son and my daughter are kind of my creative partners. They come in and they like to do all kinds of fun drawings, and I'll often take their drawings and work in some ideas. And the deal at the house is if I sell anything that was inspired by their ideas, they get a cut. So it's kind of fun to collaborate a little bit with that, because children, as you'll probably know, they're uninhibited with that creativity. They're still thinking pretty broadly.
Hi, I'm Teresa Widers, and I have been painting for about 45 years. I paint in a lot of different mediums, which a lot of artists choose just one. I paint in watercolor, oil, acrylic, and pastel. For many years, probably the last 30 years or so, I have thought that watercolor was the medium that I really needed to paint in. But lately now, I've decided that I need to go back to oil painting some of the time. I like how you can get texture. This also is an acrylic, and it also has texture. The watercolor is the way I like it, is the way the colors will blend. Now these are just beginnings of 2 paintings, and they will evolve into something else. When I'm thinking of ideas, I'm thinking of, I have beautiful flowers in my garden. This is where a lot of my ideas begin. These are a little weather worn. They tipped over in the car as I was coming onto the freeway, so there wasn't too much taking care of them right then. Something that you have to decide is, am I going to have the whole bouquet? Am I only going to emphasize 1 or 2 of the roses? Am I going to put the vase in and let the light that hits the edges of the vase show? You need to remember that when you're buying artwork, that all sizes work, and even if you've used all of your wall space, don't forget, you can buy some small piece. This is a watercolor that can sit on a nightstand, a table with some other things. This small piece can go on a bookshelf, and they look very nice. They kind of break up the staticness of the other things that you have in your showcase. Anything you do in your life is artistic. People say, I don't have a bit of art in my soul. Well, the clothes you pick out to wear in the morning, the food you put on the table during the day, it may be an arrangement of china and flowers or whatever during the day. That's all art. I just like beautiful things. As we were camping with our kids, we would ride along and they'd say, oh Mom, look at that. What color do you think that is? Well, what color would you mix to make that color? And so these things are important, and they're important things that children learn and remind you that what you're doing is valuable. Well, I am a member of ArtSource Gallery. I'm Teresa Wagers, and my art is at the Boise Airport at ArtSource Gallery, and also downtown at 1015 Main in Boise. We'd love to have you come and visit there. We have all Idaho artists there, and I'm proud to say that I'm an Idaho artist and also an Idaho native.
Hi, my name is Tony Morse. I'm an artist at the ArtSource Gallery in downtown Boise. And my medium of art is photography. And these are some of my photographs behind me. My particular interest in photography runs to the form and structure of landscape. I'm particularly interested in that because it reinforces some of the background that I've had in my education. I particularly like black and white photography, in spite of the fact that most of these are color, because black and white really is the first step to abstract. Remove the color from a photograph, that's the first step to abstracting the information in the image. I start to look at the form and structure of the image as it portrays the form and structure of landscape. And I particularly like this image because it gets at what I like about structure in an image. You have a little triangle that is reinforced by the stump right in the center, and that's reinforced by that large rock, which is called Proposal Rock, in the background. And this is what I really like about photography, is being able to look for, find, and represent these kinds of interesting structures in nature that become part of the image that I print. There's a structure to the image, a composition. And what's nice about landscape is being able to take that landscape structure and translate it into an image structure that I can print. Yeah, I was in Ketchum in the Wood River Valley, photographing landscape during trailing of the sheep. And I decided, well, I'm going to take a little break and watch the sheep go down Main Street. And as I was standing there, his father and his daughter were also watching the sheep. And as I was watching the parade, she was watching me. And how could I resist taking that picture? It's not landscape, but I really like having somebody look at me like that.
And tell me about this one.
This photograph I took on 8th Street in downtown Boise, and I was just walking down the sidewalk. I took it with an iPhone. And what attracted me initially was the contrast of the red, green, and yellow lines. And then I saw the square and the circle, and I liked that. And then I realized that this really was an amusing joke, because the soup of the day is whiskey, and the croutons, of course, are water, ice. Whiskey on the rocks is the soup of the day. It was outside a bar, of course. But the first thing that you see in the picture are the shapes and the colors, and then you see the joke. And I enjoy the photograph just because there is a joke in it.
My name is Sue Ellie. I live in Meridian, and I have been a part of the ArtSource Gallery for about a year. I paint in watercolor and acrylic, and I paint to recreate beautiful things. I don't paint for social statements or Well, I like to express emotion of peacefulness and tranquility, but not anger or anything negative. And I'm a retired nurse, and I started painting when I was a senior in nursing school. There was a course offered on the campus at OHSU in Oregon, and it was just a night class, privately presented. But the school let us use the pathology lab, and so we had the black granite tops with Bunsen burners, and all around the room there were jars of specimens on the shelves. But the teacher was mostly a seascape artist from the coast of Washington, and he taught me about having paints, a selection of paints in the palette, and how that works, and about composition and light and keeping it simple. And as I've had other instruction, I've learned that every artist has their favorite colors in their palette. Nothing's written in stone. It's very individual. Two of my images were chosen to be on wraps on electrical boxes in Meridian. About a year ago, over a year ago, I submitted 10 images and then didn't hear anything until about 3 weeks ago I got a letter that 2 images were being chosen. And one of them is, I paint a lot of koi fish, and one of them was a koi fish in watercolor, very soft and sort of dreamy. And the other is an acrylic painting of outer space, the birth of a star. I call it Bang. And it's very colorful, inspired by the Hubble telescope photos of outer space, of deep space. And I actually painted a little Hubble telescope in the painting. It's like, where's Waldo? I spend time in California in a Chinese antique store, and I'm inspired by what they have on display there. This is my rendering of a carving of a granite horse, Chinese horse. And I mentioned the mediums in acrylic. The horse is done in what's called crackle paste. I do a crazy background, then I put the horse on, and as the paste dries, it cracks by itself. So then I can introduce color into the cracks and paint over the paste, and it is a lot of fun. This painting is just from my imagination. One night, the moon was just beaming in my window, and so I know it was bright. So I just recreated what was kind of floating around in my brain and how the moon can illuminate. It's a real honor to be involved with the ArtSource Gallery. There is a lot of talent here and a lot of wonderful people that are very nice to be associated with. So I'm enjoying my association here.
Thank you.